Hey guys, welcome to Full Throttle. My name's Dexy, uh, joined by Slock, Paz, and uh,
Oh,
Audible. Uh, Shadow still can't be here with us, so Audible's happily joining us. We can go around the room and we can introduce ourselves. We can start with Slock.
Hello, I'm Slock, so I run Octane.gg. I do all the stats for it. It's fun stuff. And now I'm in a talk show.
Oh yeah.
And Audible.
Hi, I'm Vaudable. I'm a community caster, and I'm a guest on the show because we're still not able to have B Shadow on here, unfortunately, because his college internet. Hopefully he gets that fixed somehow, or like the internet god just like rain sunshine upon him, and he'll be able to get on the show. But for now, you have me, and hopefully that works out.
hey, I'm Paz. I'm Octane's OC guy. I help RLO behind the scenes. I help Chiefs behind the scenes. I help the RLPR behind the scenes. About it. Yeah.
And I'm Dexy. I do a lot of stuff with the subreddit design, like the CSS and stuff, and then also like a super active member in the esports community, and then I help with some Octane stuff as well, and do some stat stuff on the side. Um, so we have a great show lined up for you guys tonight. We got a bunch of interesting topics, and I think there'll be some great discussion. We got the community tournament guidelines. We're going to talk about that. We have the Throwdown Open Series finals. We're going to get right into that. And then we have Gfinity Elite Series, both the rosters and the groups. And then we also have, at the end of the show, we're going to talk about the biggest free agent pickups. So we talked about that a little bit last week, and we're going to go more in depth about that this week. So we can start off with the community tournament guidelines. So Psyonix recently released a set of community tournament guidelines. Guidelines like these are common across most major esport titles. Psyonix stated that the goal of these guidelines is to make things as simple as possible for TOs. TOs is tournament organizers. So Vaudable, are these guidelines a step in the right direction?
I'd say they are. Talking to a bunch of guys in the community, they've said that it's a long time coming. They've been working on these community guidelines for quite some time, and now that they finally have something to throw out there into the wild to let people know if they don't follow these guidelines, they just need to get in contact with Psyonix, email them, and see if they can work something out. So it makes it easier for people that want to know what they can and can't do for community tournaments. So like they had a full list of stuff, and if you do all that and don't do anything that's not covered in there, then you're set all fine and dandy. You don't have to contact anyone, and that's pretty good. But the only issues that we saw when it came out was there's like some outrage just because of some of the wording in it. But really, if you aren't gonna follow those guidelines, you just need to contact them and they'll work things out with you. So it's not too bad from what I've heard, the general consensus. But what do you guys think about it?
Uh,
Mm,
all right, you can go
alright.
past.
Yeah. Cheers. I'm curious to see how it will affect things like ESEA and Face It. That like if they were ever planning to run Rocket League based like 6 mans or 20s or whatever, because they generally like force a buy-in of sorts, don't they? With
Okay.
their premium or whatever, or even Cybergamer for that matter. In OCE, they like charge premium fee to play in their 20s. So I'm curious if that falls under that same category or not,
I
of
see
Yeah, I
not
that
being
think
able to.
does.
I
Yeah.
Because you
think
do,
that would fall like not in the community guidelines, but they would probably have to get in contact with Psyonix about that to make sure it's all greenlit.
Yeah. Good point.
I do think it's a step in the right direction because if you look at like other games like Blizzard, like not games, but like organized game producers, I guess.
Game
Blizzard
developers.
developers, yeah. Blizzard, Riot, they all have like publicly stated their like guidelines. So like Blizzard even has like a portal for like all their games and all the criteria that you need to meet uh for be able to host an event. And then if you are still below that or like don't meet all the criteria, then you can like just send a message right on that portal to
Mm.
see what they say if they can host it. Basically, it's just they want you to host these events. It's just they want to be kept in the loop to make sure it's like the best for the scene as a whole.
And be covered in case anything goes wrong and they told you not to do it. So then it's not their fault and they don't have to worry about their legal team having to take action. It's just they already have their bases covered and it's unfortunate, but it's also good for the community too that they have something that they can follow along, and then, as mentioned, just contact them if they don't follow those guidelines with their tournament.
Yeah, and I actually like people were like, "Wow, $5,000 is really low." But like I looked through the Blizzard guidelines for their games, and it was the same. It was like maximum $5,000. So like it's not anything new, and it just seems Sonic's really just modeled this off other games, and it's worked well for
Yeah.
other games, so it should be fine.
Yeah, and just to note that this is so I know other games like Blizzard I've looked at, they have like their community license, and you don't need anything special to get the community license. It's like just a general license, and I think that's what this is emulating.
Yeah.
It's kind of like anyone can use these guidelines and know that they're not gonna get in trouble if they stay within these rules. But if you want to go past that, you can contact them directly. Like they have an email that they have on their official blog post. They have an email to contact them, and so if you want to do more than 5,000 per event, you can just email them and you say, "Hey, here's my event. It doesn't fit in the guidelines outlined, but can we go up to 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000?" And then at that point, then they'll work through it with you, with the esports specialists that they have.
Yeah, it's just overall good to make sure that like we don't have people hosting tournaments, like massive tournaments, and then not paying out the money to the
Oh
players.
goodness.
So
Yeah.
that would be really bad.
It'd look really bad on Psionics as well if like a tournament like that happened and they allowed it to happen, because they're basically like giving access to their IP to these tournament organizers and runners to produce their events. So if something happens, it kind of like falls back on them as well. So this just covers their bases, but it also could have been better if they kind of had a better worded release about it, because they're just like, here it is, here's community guidelines, follow it or don't follow it. They didn't really like specify to email them until like later when they were replying to messages. So could have been better in that end, but they kind of like cleared up some of the
I think the guidelines themselves are like they're well worded well. I think like accompanying the guidelines, they should have posted like a blog post clearing up
Yeah,
like that they're not like restricting tournaments, but just that they want to be involved in like the production, or not production, but
Yeah.
like
agreed.
development of it.
Yeah, definitely a step in the right direction. I think I don't think there's really anything wrong that I saw when I was reading through these, like anything that you would want to see done differently. So clearly they did their due diligence, and it definitely looks like they took a lot of inspiration from other games, or not other games, but other developers that have been doing this for a long time. So it's a good thing to see. And one of these things is that I saw in conversations online, and I think you guys probably did as well, is like, isn't this restrictive, right? We saw the E-League stuff. People said that E-League was cut down from 250K to 150K. That was like a rumor. And I think what they want to do is control the flow of money, right, in their esport, because it is their game and it's their industry. Well, not their industry, but their scene, and they want to control the flow of money. And if you have big tournament organizers or just rich people coming in and pushing a bunch of money into the scene and saying, okay, we're going to pay, we're going to do huge payouts at big events, and it's going to inflate everything, right? Because then all these players are going to want to only play in events that pay them large sums of money.
Right.
And then eventually everyone runs out of cash.
Yeah,
And
basically making it unsustainable.
Yeah, it's just not it's not a sustainable model. So I think this sets up a pretty good path for sustainability, and definitely good to see.
I just have
Yeah.
one question. Vaudable, how much what are the Nexus like prize pools per week?
Well, per week it's like 300 at most.
Because if
So
you do,
it hasn't gotten anywhere near
Okay.
like 5,000 a month or anywhere near like 50K a year. Like I don't think any community
Yeah.
org has ever gotten really close to that, unless they run like, yeah, no one's really done that. No one on the land side either. Like there's been people like the only people that have really tried to do stuff was that thing with the people trying to run that like community 1v1 tournament. And all
Right.
that stuff happened.
they
Oh,
wanted to
yeah.
host what was it, $10,000?
It was like 20. It was
Yeah.
10,000 first, and then it was like 20K, and then they like split it up to like 4 different
Oh,
events. I don't
really?
really know what
Yeah.
specifically was going on for that, but I do know that probably could have been handled better on both sides, but now kind of push them to release this stuff so they have like a set in stone guideline for people to follow.
Well, the community 1v1 cup, like that was they announced all that before. I think that's what prompted Psyonix to release these guidelines
I
because
think
Yeah.
they were like, we're hosting a $10,000 1v1 tournament, and then after that, after they were contacted by Psyonix that they couldn't do that, but like at that time there were no publicly stated guidelines, and then Psyonix were like, yeah, we have to publicly state this.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that was like 2 weeks ago, so I'd assume that they've
It
been
was already in
working,
the works.
that they've been doing this, setting this stuff up for probably a month now. I wouldn't think.
I'd say more than a month, honestly, but they finally like finalized it, and this is
Yeah.
like a good time to release it too, especially because they are having the tournament's beta. So releasing tournament organizing guidelines with that beta is kind of a good idea because it kind of is like hand in hand.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can kind of move our way into some of the events that have happened this past week and the upcoming events in the next couple months. So the Throwdown Open Series finals happened, and so Throwdown TV hosted a preseason gauntlet-style tournament with the best 6 teams in Oceania. After they finished first place in league play, Dark-Sided got swept 4-0 by Chiefs Esports in the
That
grand
was
finals.
crazy.
Paz, are Oceanic teams inconsistent?
Well, they are like on online events. They are because like Darksided pulled through league play 6-1, only losing to last seed as well. So they were obviously like clear favorites. But like for games that mattered, for some reason Chiefs just always managed to pull through, I guess. But then you look at other teams like Tenemi's Retirement Home, Legacy Esports. They're all hovering that 3rd to 6th with Love Decks, but they all just beat each other. There's no like you can't just go straight into the game and go, oh, like I think Love Decks is definitely going to beat Tenemi's based off history, because they're pretty much like dead even in how many times they win head to head.
Yeah, so
and
I mean,
things like that.
I have a point to that is just Legacy Esports in the first week of the Throwdown League play. They had they performed a lot better than like people thought they would. They went like 9-3 in the first week, and then the second week they went 1-8. So
Mm.
like that's a
Yeah.
huge turnaround, like bad performance in the second week compared to their first week. And then the next week, which was the finals, which just happened, they somehow like surprised everyone and were making an incredible run because they in the gauntlet finals they had to play all the way from the bottom. They beat Love Decks, moved on. They beat Retirement Home, moved on. They beat Tainted Minds, moved on, and then even like against Chiefs, they had a really close series before they lost. So like that like shows that like there is some inconsistency because like they had one amazing week, then a bad week, and then another amazing week.
I
Yeah,
have a
well,
question for
even
you too, Paz. How long
Oh, yeah.
has the Legacy squad been together? Like, could it be potentially that they haven't
this
like
Legacy
warmed up?
squad?
Yeah.
I believe they started January. It could have been end of December.
Okay.
Um,
So it could be
no,
like some
yeah,
growing
actually, I think it was
pains or
end of
something.
December. I think it was more just, it could be, but you have to remember that Darksided Chiefs, those 2 squads specifically, have been around the longest out of any of these squads. And Tatum
True.
Mine, sorry. Apart from Tatum Mines, Chiefs, and Darksided, all these squads pretty much formed on the end of RLCS, so November, December area. So the fact that Legacy are pretty much winning a lot more than all these other teams, but still inconsistent against that original 3, is a bit. I don't know. I don't know if it's trying to show us that they're like contenders for that top 2 spot, or yeah, just no idea. But one thing I did want to bring up, sorry, was looking back at the beginning of January, Legacy actually won. Out of the first 3 cups, Legacy actually won the first one and the third one, and they came second in the second one. So while everyone was getting back in the swing of things, it's obvious that they had enough practice or potential maybe to actually pull through and be a top 2 team. But looking
Yeah,
at
they
these
also
stats
played
now,
a lot
they're
more
so-
games in the Gauntlet as well, so that could be a
Mhm.
factor. Because Darksided just literally had a game where they weren't warmed up or anything against
Yeah.
Chiefs in the finals, and Chiefs were warmed up from that like really intense game against Legacy, so that probably prepared them a lot more to get that 4-0 sweep against them. But still, with Darksided being a top team, you'd expect them to at least take one game.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a downside, maybe, or maybe it's a feature of a gauntlet style, where you have teams that are battling from the bottom are more warmed up than the teams at the top. And we've seen other tournaments shy away from that. I believe RLCS switched their format during league play so that players or teams don't have the back-to-back on the same day, so that there's less of an advantage for a team coming in off a win and they're warmed up, and then they have to play a team that's hasn't played their match for the day. So that definitely plays a factor. I don't know how much of a factor you guys think that plays, and is it like maybe something that's good about the gauntlet style?
Yeah, I'll just say that I love the gauntlet bracket finals because
Same.
it's just super exciting for a viewer to see like a team make an incredible run from like being knocked out to winning like 5 series in a row to take the finals. I think so in like League of Legends that's happened before and in like Korea, and it's been pretty exciting. It's really not that great in for like the players themselves because you have just like 1 series and then you're out of the finals.
Yeah.
But it
Like
does
compare it
it
to a double elimination, it's sort of lackluster in competitive integrity, I guess.
so like
Like
you
there's no
you lose one and you're knocked out, but it also rewards the league play standings in a sense because so Darksided finished first in league play, and then you because of the gauntlet finals, the lowest they could end up in the like the whole event was second because they were already in the finals. So it makes the league play matter more. It's more exciting for the viewers, but it's not that great in my mind for the players.
Like competitive wise,
Yeah,
because like the matches might not be as like even as you would want them to be.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. That one and done aspect of it definitely plays a role, like in the fan experience. I think that's why you see tournaments like March Madness for college basketball is like one of the most popular events, sporting events of the year that like everyone looks forward to, because you look for that storyline of the team that came out of nowhere and they started all the way at the bottom and they didn't get any buys because they're the worst seed and they battled their way into the mid rounds or the late rounds. And I think that's kind of what you saw here. So
Yeah.
Actually, I remember this one case where in League of Legends where like Cloud9 were like on the verge of being eliminated, and then in the last week they were able to secure the last spot in the Gauntlet finals,
Oh
and no
wow.
one thought they would win, and they beat 3 teams in a row, two in a reverse sweep, and then 3-0'd the last team to qualify for the World Championship, and it was just so exciting just
Wow.
watching that. So like, it's just
Makes it
really
entertaining.
entertaining for the viewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think this will like lead up to the actual league play for qualifying for RLCS? Do you think like they're still just gonna be determining which team's gonna get like third or fourth, or like do you think they like Legacy actually have a good chance?
Personally, I'd say Chiefs, Ten of Mines already in league play. I actually don't think Ten of Mines will pull out of league play to that top 4. I think Legacy would take their spot, Darksider will take another spot, and possibly Retirement Home. Like, at least I want to believe that. Just because the way teams are playing, I actually think Retirement Home played better than Legacy. I know Sarik's in the chat, so I'm sorry, but that's just how I'm looking at it. The top 4 for OC right now for me would be Chiefs, Darksided, Legacy, and Retirement Home.
interesting. So I want to stay on Oceania for just a second. So we talked about how inconsistent teams have been, particularly in this past couple of weeks, this this Open Series event, and you kind of just talked about how you think they'll perform, but do you think that as a whole, Oceania is getting more competitive, or will Chiefs, be the favorite again going into RLCS and then into RLCS World Championship?
Well, they choked at group stages, and I wouldn't put it past them to choke again during RLCS league play. Apart from that, I think they'll still be favorites only because they already have such a huge backing behind them, like internationally and like within Australia. But after that, I think after like the international crowd backs them, everyone will just keep backing them again like they were before, and it'll still be favorites. Makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
I still
Yeah.
think they'll be favorites. I think that 1 week in the league play, the first week where they didn't do too well, I think there was just an off week and they were still getting back into the swing of things because this was like they were directly invited to the Throwdown Open Series, so they didn't even have to play in the qualifiers. I mean, they've been playing the Gfinity Cups, but that's like a little like not as high stakes as this. So I think they were just getting back into the swing of things. And then like the second week we saw them go like I forget the exact record, but they did incredible. And then we obviously saw them sweep the Darksided in the finals. So I
Oh
think
yes,
it was just a bad week that first week, and I think since then they've like found their ground again, and they should be able to keep dominating OCE as they have been.
I feel like Chiefs is kind of like notorious for having like a bad week when they start off a league play, and then they kind of like warm up, get into their groove, and then like pretty much like dominate the competition. But one thing I do want to mention is like the Gfinity Elite Series for AU is like how much is that experience going to affect the results in league play, do you think? Like is it going to like give them more experience so that they'll have better matchups against it and it'll be closer competition, or is it going to be like not really too much of a factor?
Really depends how much like learn, or I guess it depends how much they scrim, and depends how quickly the other teams learn. Because I remember the first season 3 of RLCS, I think it was, when Chiefs came back from America from playing RLCS, and they just had like one up on everyone because they knew how like they like learned a more effective way to play pretty much. And with that, everyone else had to catch up and I guess learn like the game again. And I feel that gap is slowly closing. Yeah, yeah, they'll still
Just going to
like,
take time,
go-
basically.
yeah, pretty much.
I
I'm
think it.
glad that you. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I no, I think that gap not closing yet is just ties back to the inconsistency because I think the
Yeah,
teams on their good day definitely have the ability to compete. It's just that they can't consistently do that.
yeah,
And because most of them are new rosters too.
Yeah.
yeah,
That is true.
Relatively new.
yeah,
Yeah, and I definitely think that comes with time, and with more events happening in that region, um, just like we've seen in regions like EU with Gfinity joining. Um, I definitely think we'll see that like the skill level kind of even out at the top instead of it being so lopsided into like 2 or 3 teams. It'll be maybe 6 or 7 teams are able to compete for that top 4 spot. And kind of along that same line, Vaudable brought up Gfinity series in uh, Australia. We can kind of talk about Gfinity Elite Series in EU, which is, I think, been like I don't want to say like a breeding ground, but maybe like a training area for some of these players you've seen now move into RLRS and RLCS teams. So it's definitely like worth talking about because it's here and it's got a pretty big prize pool, and there's some pretty big names now joining the EU Gfinity Elite Series. And the rosters are starting to take form with hashtag United picking up big names like I was saying, Doomsy, Data, and Flarkey, and other organizations are working to secure their rosters for the upcoming season. So Slog, how do you think the announced rosters will perform in Gfinity Elite Series?
Yeah, so hashtag picked up Doomsday Data Flark, and that's a solid roster. I think they'll I think with the competition this time around, if the RLCS teams actually compete with their full rosters, it might be hard for this team to do good. It was interesting to see Epsilon opt to not re-sign Data and Flark because that was their team in season 2, and Data has been on Epsilon even in season 1, and he's been a solid performer in Gfinity series so far. But like I said, we have Team Vitality, we have Excel, we have Team Envious, we have Fnatic. If all those teams are competing week in, week out in the
Method as
Gfinity,
well is pretty good.
yeah. I was just saying the RLCS teams first, but
Yeah.
yeah, those teams, if they compete, it's these like second tier RLRS level teams are gonna have a tough time. I think more interesting than the hashtag United signing is the signing of Epsilon Esports, who they signed D7, Fake Out, and Pugze, that they used to be known as With My Boys. I think this is a relatively unknown roster, and I think they're gonna surprise a lot of people in Gfinity Elite Series. Have any of you heard of them or kept track of them?
I haven't heard too
Nope.
much of them personally. One thing I do want to comment about hashtag United before we move on past them is that I feel like they went with hashtag United instead of Epsilon Esports because you know how Doomsy is trying to push his whole like content creation streaming thing,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's what hashtag United is really big about with their FIFA scene. So I feel like that's a good resource for them to try and foster the growth as like personalities, and Doomsy's like perfect for that kind of brand. So it's a no-brainer for them to try and pick up that squad.
I guess that's what's appealing to Doomsy to sign with hashtag United as well then, because who's is hashtag United? It's owned by Spencer Owen, right? The like big FIFA YouTuber.
Yeah, I think
So
so.
like, yeah, it makes sense that Doomsy wants to get in on that. But yeah, okay. So going back to Epsilon now, it's D7, Pugze, and Fake Hour, really unknown names and like just most people who follow the scenes mind. Uh, they they've been winning like not winning, but like they've been doing really well in every single Gfinity Challenger Cup. They've been taking out teams like Method you mentioned before, the Burrito B, Chacarone, and Rick
Rick
Swande.
Strande?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They've been beating that team who everyone has qualifying for RLRS in their books. They've been beating Excel. They've been beating pickup teams of RLCS players like Kate Up, Berry Peak, Chaussette. They've been beating teams like that. So
Did they beat Envy once?
they may have. I mean, they've been beating everyone, and this is like one of the top teams that I think will qualify for RLRS. And I'm
So basically
really
like a dark horse team, you'd say.
yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
really glad that Gfinity Org picked them up, and I'm really excited to see them perform on land versus all these other great teams.
One thing I do want to add, just because we didn't cover it, Epsilon sub is actually speed, and hashtag sub is distant.
Right, yeah. So
Bit of thing.
Speed played in with Reason Gaming last season. He subbed in, I think, for one series, and I mean we saw Reason Gaming won Gfinity that last season. So Speed
Did
is
they
a
go
solid player.
undefeated last season?
They did, yes. They went.
Yeah.
They
So
won
like
the
even
whole.
the match that he did sub in, they won that one. So that's good that they have
Hmm.
such a strong sub on their team.
So I've also been hearing that Speed might be playing every single week for Gfinity. So I don't think the full roster of D7, Fake Out, and Pugze will be playing, but regardless, just seeing those players like make the step, as Dexy first put it, like this is like a breeding ground of players, and
Yeah.
like this is where these players will be able to make the jump to like the next level and get their
Adds a lot
names
of
out.
depth to EU as well, like especially for people looking to compete in the RLRS. Because this season compared to last season, the teams that are trying to qualify are a lot more stacked, and it's going to be some great competition. I didn't really personally pay too much attention last season. I don't want to like throw myself out there and say, oh, I haven't watched RLRS too much, but I unfortunately didn't too much because Fnatic was just like sweeping everyone. The competition we saw like Golden Hawks did okay, and then Juicy Kids they got second, and then there weren't too many stories in that, but now we have so many teams who have grown up and like Gfinity fostering the growth of these teams. They have LAN experience against top competitors, and then they're going to get these qualifications, and it's just going to be a bloodbath in the play-ins.
Yeah, and I think one of the I don't want to say hallmark, maybe that's like too flashy of a word, but I think one of the great things about like the Gfinity Elite series and how it's set up is I believe all the matches are played live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're not online, and I think that experience alone, like traveling, because even though Europe is tightly packed, some of these players are coming from very far away. So traveling and then having to play, and then maybe traveling back if you're not having a place close by, I think that is good experience, especially for these teams when they have to travel internationally to play in NA. It's just good experience for them to learn how to play under those kind of pressures. And it kind of goes back to that point where this is like a great breeding ground for talent. And I think that's why you see players like Ignite seemingly come out of nowhere if you're not paying attention, and just get placed like one season of Gfinity, and then he gets plucked out and he's put into the RLCS team. So I
Yeah.
expect to see a lot more of that happening. It's actually like pretty exciting.
Yeah. So I mean, going back to the question at hand is these teams. It'll really depend, like I said, on the RLCS teams competing, and it's gonna be tough because Gfinity will be running alongside RLCS, and
Yeah, that's why
Gfinity.
they have their own specific rosters that they drafted from the Gfinity competitions to fill in those rosters and get themselves experience against these top competitors.
Yeah, so Gfinity Rocket League like will take place on Saturdays, and then as we all know, RLCS is on Sundays. So the RLCS teams will either have to play Gfinity and then travel back home and then play RLCS the next day, or like Fnatic has like a headquarters in London, so they'll be probably be having their players play in the Gfinity and then housing them in their like facility that they have, and then the players will play from there.
Might not
Yeah,
be a
Yeah.
bad idea to like breed some teamwork and stuff as well that they'd experience on like a LAN environment. Then they take that experience over to when they're doing their matches in league play. So that might help up their skill level against these competitors. Because I know last season, I believe, I don't know if it was all their games, but Method, which is now, it's not really like 100% confirmed, but they're picked up by another org, the X Method team, that they are they played most of their matches in like the method house itself, so maybe that helped them get such good results, and we could see that potentially with the Fnatic roster in the season of RLCS.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a good improvement for RL Esports altogether. I could see it becoming standard with at least all the top teams, like making an assumed thing, I guess, like what League and CS:GO have now, pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it'll be exciting for like just to mention the Australian Gfinity Elite Series, which will start soon as well, and I think it'll be hopefully that will help develop the talent there as well.
Yeah, 100%.
for sure. I think continuing along the same Gfinity line, they did announce the groups for the EU Gfinity Elite Series. So Group A is XL #United.
Nordavind.
Nordavind.
Nordavind. I wasn't even going to try to pronounce that. uh, Envious, and then Vitality. And then Group B is Ares, Epsilon, Fnatic, Method, and Unilad. So, Slack, I want to ask you, do you think these groups are balanced?
All right, so I mean, just if we look at it like just first glance, we see Group A has Excel, Envy, Vitality, three RLCS teams, while Group B has Fnatic, and that's the only RLCS teams. So if you're
Yeah,
just looking at in terms of RLCS rosters, then these are not really that balanced. Uh, One thing I have to mention is that the groups are standardized across all the games in Gfinity Elite Series, which I think is a poor decision because each team may not may be better at one game than another, and I think that's just gonna not be good. So going back to the RLCS teams, like I said, it's not known yet if all the RLCS players will actually be playing. So if they don't, then it's potentially could be balanced. But for now, if they assuming that they do play, it's not really that balanced. Nordavind,
we
we didn't speak. Oh, sorry, Nordavind we didn't
Yeah,
speak
I
of
was about to
earlier,
say
but
that we might see them like sub in to those matches if they don't play them all the time when their team isn't performing as well as the organization would like them to perform. So that might be a different dynamic we could see this season.
right. So I mean, I think this potentially like is definitely going to be balanced, but Group B, like it depends on if Method, which is B Chaperone and Rick Ronde, will be able to perform. Epsilon, which is the new roster that we mentioned, D7, Fake Out, Pugsley, who are all new players into coming into like the Gfinity League. So we don't know exactly how they'll perform on their first LAN matches. So and then Ares, which are supposedly picking up Team Endpoint, but we'll see. Uh, and that was last season's second place team, so it could be balanced. Like I said, it just depends on if
Could be
RLC's
or
teams.
couldn't be, basically.
Yeah, we don't know because we don't have all the rosters yet.
Yeah, I definitely think you brought up a point, Sluck, about how for this event, there's multiple games being played by these organizations, and so it's balanced based on their team's performance across all of the gaming titles. And you were saying that you think that's a mistake. I tend to agree, but I'd love to hear more of your thoughts about that and maybe how they should have done it.
Yeah, I mean, say like Excel might be really good at Street Fighter. That doesn't and then like they're decent at Rocket League. It's not really like the same thing. By like standardizing the groups, they're assuming that like all these teams are like the same like average level across the games, and I assume that's how they did their seeding on the groups because they didn't really announce too much about how they did the seeding. But yeah, it's not really a good idea because like I said already, it's not going to be balanced.
Do you guys have any thoughts on? I think probably like the most odd or peculiar. Okay,
Just
peculiar.
skip the word.
Yeah, I'll skip it.
Yeah.
The most odd pickup or organization is the Unilad joining, which is like kind of along the lines of like Barstool or one of those
I do have some
marketing
opinions on that.
advertising organizations.
I feel like Unilad got into it because they're doing FIFA. Did they do FIFA in the previous seasons?
Yeah. Wait, no.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they did
I don't
FIFA.
think they did FIFA in the previous season. So since that's like
Yeah.
a new thing for Gfinity, and Unilad is really big in the FIFA scene, and they have their
Right.
whole like online content creation and stuff around FIFA. That's probably why they got into it. I think Ares or Nordavind is one of those two is also
Ares
big
is
in FIFA.
Ares is FIFA.
Yeah. So Ares and #United. So that's three teams that are really big into FIFA that want to diversify into other games. So that's probably why they got into it. Not specifically for Rocket League, but that's kind of like a bonus, I'd say.
I have to say Nordavind probably, I'm not sure, but they probably have a FIFA player or so because
Yeah, I'd assume so.
they're backed by a Norwegian football club. So
Yeah, so they've got to have a FIFA
they
team.
definitely have a FIFA.
Yeah, that's definitely good insight. Kind of like clears that up because I know a lot of people online were perplexed. Maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Like, who is
Unilad.
#United and who's Unilad Esports? Why are they getting into Rocket League? It's not that they're getting into Rocket League; it's that they're getting into FIFA, and then Rocket League's that comes with the package.
Yeah. So hopefully, those are really big organizations. They have really strong online followings. So
Yeah,
if they end up picking up, I know we know hashtags roster, but if Unilad or any of these other other organizations pick up like good rosters and perform well, that's kind of some untapped area of fans that can kind of come over from their FIFA matches and watch something that's similar to the sport.
yeah.
And watch Rocket
Maybe not the
League.
same because it uses cars, but it does have the same like it's car ball, so it's kind of similar.
Actually, one thing we could mention, like relating to Gfinity, is I feel like relating back to like what we talked about earlier, the community tournament guidelines. So Gfinity now obviously have to like adhere to those guidelines, right?
Well,
I
I'm
think
sure they were
they-
contacted beforehand.
I'm sure they would have
or
talked
they
to them.
they were in talks already with
Well, I
them.
mean, it seemed that like Psyonix wasn't really involved in Gfinity at all. Like considering like players don't have titles for like competing at such a large event.
That is true.
And
That is
like
true.
other
Mm.
details, like how there was overlap between the RLCS play-ins last season and the
Yeah, that's
Gfinity
true.
playoffs.
We could see. I hope we see more coordination between both of them and like collaboration to make things work out the best. As Cloud mentioned in the chat, work out the best for the players themselves. Because if it doesn't, then it's just gonna be like a train wreck for both parties
Yeah.
involved.
Basically, get Gfinity players their titles.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think
Well,
one
it's the
thing.
biggest thing to come to Australia as well in that sense, or Oceania, I should say. So far, aside from RLCS, so
Yeah, that's true.
that
So
for it
that's
to
big.
flop now will probably break Oceania.
Whoa, break Oceania.
Yeah, just break. Just no GFD. All right, we're done here.
Yeah, I definitely think we did talk about it, and I think we've kind of been touching on it here and there, but burnout is a real possibility with
Oh,
some of these
yeah.
players. Just if they do have to travel, or even without travel, like playing in a live environment, and then 12 or 18 hours later having to play basically a more important match that could determine your the next 6 to 8 months of your life. That can be pretty daunting, especially if it's 7 to 8 weeks of that straight, right? So
Yeah. Well, same
Mm.
for the RLRS teams, because someone brought up a good point in chat as well, is that they play on Fridays, supposedly in the evenings, and then Saturdays for the Gfinity. So that's like a terrible schedule for them. So like that is even more likely for them to get burnt out on.
for sure. So definitely something to keep an eye on here, as this stuff starts to ramp up in the coming month. But I definitely think like, these teams will perform well, right? Some of these teams that we talked about, like Epsilon, kind of that dark horse team. No one really knows who they are, but if you pay attention, they've been making waves. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how this all kind of like fleshes out over the
Yeah.
next month.
We
or
just
so.
want it to start so we can see great Rocket League.
Yeah,
It's so soon.
there's been like a big lull recently where there's not been any
And people have
events.
just been focusing on like drama and like getting outraged
Yeah,
about everything.
I
We
think
just need it to start, and we'll be safe. and
once
sound.
after actually yeah everything will start like next week, March 10th, with the play-ins, and then after that there's just gonna be so much Rocket League with the
It's
NA,
gonna be
EU,
awesome.
RLCS, Throwdown, and Gfinity.
So much Rocket League.
Perfect. So I want to turn us to maybe one of the most fun topics we have tonight. Gives us a chance to really talk about players and analyze the differences between players. So we had a lot of high profile free agent pickups this offseason, with moves like Justin going to NRG and iIgnite going to Team Envy. So Vaudable, my question to you is, which free agent pickup will have the biggest impact on their team?
Oh goodness. Okay. So just looking at the four, or I guess there's more than four, but we're just gonna I'm just gonna focus on Justin, iIgnite, and UKO. UKO, we haven't seen too much impact from him. He kind of had a lackluster performance at DreamHack. A lot of people expected a lot more, like a lot bigger things, because they've said he's like the EU Justin, even though he didn't really come from the RLRS. He just kind of like got plopped onto the team. So hopefully, once they have Mystic competing in that team, that'll just round out that roster a bit more and work a lot better. But I don't think Yukio will be able to like carry them into the top 3 or top 4 like they've been in the past. But I don't think they're going to get relegated with him. And moving on to iIgnite, sticking on the EU side. I feel like it's huge that they were able to pick up such a strong player who helped the Team Secret team get some great results. He might not have been the main reason for it, but he had some great showings with that. And as you mentioned in the Gfinity Elite Series as well, he was doing like throwing up stats left and right that were really impressing people. So Envy has noticed they have problems, and hopefully this will be the ingredient to fix that. But it's really going to rely on iIgnite or UKO for both those squads to kind of be like the standout player and be able to hopefully carry them to victory. And that's going to be a tall order. And Justin, he's already getting on a really solid squad who is in the top 4, arguably going to be top 3 this season. And Justin basically like carried, I don't want to say basically carried, but had really great stats when he was playing with Lachinio and Epic Johnny. So now that he's on an even more solid squad, he'll probably have even better stats, and it might just be more rounded out, and he might not be as what is it, like as in the spotlight as he was for Out of Style. But I feel like he's going to be a bigger impact for Energy. Like they could possibly push maybe top 2 or maybe number 1, but it really depends on like how you're judging that impact. If it's just people staying in the top positions or doing really well in the top positions, or preventing themselves from getting relegated, because Flipside almost did last season, and Envious were in that relegation thing and just managed to break out of it. So there's a bunch of different factors that could attribute to it.
Yeah, I think one of the other big changes in North America is Matt coming on to Ghost Gaming to replace Classics, because Ghost Gaming
Yeah.
was already a top 4 team, and they opted to drop Classics in favor of Matt. Matt in previous seasons has been amazing. He's been like an MVP candidate in past seasons, putting on like very, very like great performances. I think this is like gonna be interesting to see him play on like a completely new roster. Like we've never seen him play with Zane Jackie or Lethamir before until DreamHack, where they didn't do too hot. But I think with a bunch of practice, I think they'll become like a really good team.
Yeah, I feel the same way for them as I feel with like Yukio with Flipside Tactics. Like they just need to practice, iron out those inconsistencies, and I feel like they can perform pretty well. Probably Ghost more so than Flipside, but only time will tell with that.
Obviously,
Yeah,
there are other roster changes, but I think these 4 are like the major ones that will probably have the most impact on the team.
yeah, definitely. One thing I think we should talk about is, Yukio came on in place of Marky Duda, and there was all that talk about Marky Duda's lack of focus over the past year. Towards Rocket League specifically, his playtime on Steam was down, and his play may have reflected that, and that's maybe why they changed out to go with Yukio. But Yukio played with the roster at DreamHack and did not perform well at all. Like, if you look at his stats over the past 6 months, is 200 score per game, which is pretty low. I think, of all the other top moves here, that's the lowest score per game, and that usually score per game is a pretty good indicator of a player's skill level. Or
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you could say skill
What was
level.
the I'd be interested to see the score per game for Flipside Tactics as a whole, and how he would have like he fits in that roster with the performances they've had, because that might just be Flipside Tactics not really performing too well. But if it's not, and if it's actually UKO like doing the worst out of all of them, then maybe he just can't keep up to the level of play. There might be a few different factors for that.
I think maybe a lot of like the data behind UKO like that we have comes from DreamHack, and I think maybe he hurt from
Gotcha.
not being able to have the chemistry they had with Mystic, and having to like
Yeah, that could
adapt to
be
play
it
with
too.
Jesse. Because from what we've heard and from what we've seen in him playing 6-man, he's an incredible player. And I think like so if we take a look back at the DreamHack qualifiers, they actually played with their full roster, Cooksier, Mystic, and
True.
UKO, and
And they won that.
they qualified through the winners final, beating who's now Team Vitality. So I mean, they performed really well. It's probably I want to say that the reason they didn't do too hot at DreamHack is, or he didn't do too hot specifically because the team did great, thanks to Cooks here. But
Yeah,
uh,
Cooks are basically like hard
I want to
carried
say
that
that the
team.
reason he didn't do too hot is because he had to play with a completely new player who he didn't have any practice with before.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And
Yeah.
Justin is obviously one of the most talked about players right now. He's kind of getting up there into like squishy realm of popularity among
Oh yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
enthusiasts. Every time you talk about like, oh, who's the top player, they're gonna be like Squishy Justin. Cookser, Fireburner,
J-Naps.
yeah, J-Naps. So I think he's getting up there, but we really haven't seen him play outside of RLRS. I mean, there have been moments where he's played, but you haven't seen him play in a league setting for multiple
With the
weeks.
full roster and everything
with the
too.
full
Like he's
roster.
had good results on 6-mans like UKO, but we haven't seen anything else, so we don't have data to kind of pull from.
Well, I mean, we have the data that Garrett said on Reddit that Justin averages 450 points per scrim. So we don't
not
know.
bad.
We don't know
Not
how
bad.
true that is, but they're obviously saying that Justin is nuts, and
Yeah.
probably is.
Do you think there's too much hype there surrounding him?
There could be, but you know, this season will be. I keep saying this time and time again because that's really because we don't have too much data on these players yet. The season will be the deciding factor of who's going to put up or shut up, basically,
Yeah.
for their stats
Yeah.
and their level of play in RLCS. So
Yeah, I don't think there's too much hype. It's basically, I think he deserves that hype. It's just if he can
Yeah.
live up to that hype.
yeah.
Yeah.
Same for UKO and
Same for all
Ignite,
these
I would
players,
say.
yeah.
Yeah, same for all these
Yeah.
players.
On
Because
their
we
new
haven't
teams.
seen any of them compete
Yeah.
with their teams yet, except UKO, but that wasn't the full roster, so we can't really
Yeah.
say too much. But that's what data we have.
For sure.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
think Justin will have the biggest impact on the team. I don't think that Ignite, despite how good he is, I don't think he'll save the struggles that NV have been having since they won the world
Yeah, they
championship.
might do a
Basically,
bit better.
they might do a bit better, but I still think that necessarily Greasy wasn't necessarily the problem on that team, and I don't think that a replacement of Ignite is really gonna add too much to that team.
Yeah. One thing I do want to mention too that's an interesting stat about past world champions for RLCS is after they win, the next season they fall off completely and they do terribly and just bomb. So maybe Gale Force is next up to try and break that curse, or maybe we can see them fall off a little bit because they got 8th at DreamHack and they had some lackluster performances online leading up to that as well. So, maybe there
Well,
might be another number 1 spot in the open for RLCS.
They came back after DreamHack and won
True,
Ting finals, so the Ting Open.
That's true.
So like,
The Ting, I don't want to rag on
Except-
Axitas, but the Ting Open was kind of it was its own thing.
I mean, they
Yeah.
swept
They did 4-0 Fnatic.
Fnatic, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But Ting Finals wasn't a lane, was it?
No, it was
No.
online,
Yeah.
and it was NA and EU server switches
Yeah,
between them
yeah.
and Cloud9. They still beat Cloud9, so that's a
On
big
EU, but
accomplishment.
still.
And
Yeah.
they 4-0'd Fnatic on a online connection, but I feel like Fnatic's more like a middle of the pack team for this RLCS season, and Cloud9 or not Cloud9, Gale Force is more like top 4, maybe top 3, but I don't think they'd get potentially number 1. I think PSG might take that spot for them this season.
So actually, if we think about it, there hasn't been that many roster changes on the EU side.
Yeah,
So we have Ignite stepping in for Gruzy, and we have UKO stepping in for Marky Duda, and then as a result of that, we have Marky Duda stepping in for Zenzus, and I think that Excel move is probably the least impactful move, because I think most people still have Excel as their bottom tier RLCS team, and the addition of Marky Duda isn't really going to change that. So
Didn't
yeah,
they say themselves that they didn't expect to make it that far?
yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. That they were surprised with their performance and being able to actually make it to the playoffs. I think what helped them was the complete failure of Envy, because
Oh, yeah.
most people would have expected Envy to perform adequately, and they
Goodness.
didn't. But yeah, on the NA side, there have been so many changes. We have, we said, Justin for Jacob, which most people will say that that's their most impactful move for the offseason, and NRG is gonna
I'd say most impactful move for the NA RLCS
NA yeah
teams.
maybe even overall, honestly.
True.
But yeah, Justin replacing Jacob, Matt replacing Classics, and then we have Jacob replacing Matt, and Classics
And then
replacing
Classics replacing Sad Junior.
yeah, and those two changes are they're still I think for Classics stepping in for Sad Junior is definitely a clear upgrade. And I want to say that that roster, like I've been telling everyone that roster is my like top 4 for NA, but I don't think like the addition of classics is the reason. I think Corrupted G and Corrupted G is just gonna
Corrupted G and Chrome.
yeah, Corrupted G and Corrupted G is just gonna completely like stomp
That connection.
just stomp as he has been doing. And I think just having like a solid player in classics will do him good, and Chrome as well. But that team is basically Corrupted G in my mind.
Do you guys think about Team Digitas? Do you guys think that Turtle is a really big addition, or is he not really going to help that team?
I'd say he's helping their team with more experience because they've been able to face off and bring a lot more to the RLCS type of teams. And they made top 8 at DreamHack, which was no small feat, especially with how that's like the most stacked Rocket League tournament there's been to date. So
And they're
being
an
able to
RS
make it to top 8 in
Top
that,
1 team as well.
and with all the competition they're going to be facing in the rival series, they kind of needed Turtle's experience because it's going to be tough for them to try and get that top 2 spot. I still feel like they'll get it, but I don't think they're going to get it 7-0 like they did last season.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any other thoughts on?
Yeah,
that, or-
I think I think Turtle brings a lot to the team. Like Vaudable said, a lot of experience, a lot of LAN experience,
Yeah.
and
sure.
I think he's an upgrade over Hato. So I think that team is just
Oh yeah, and Hato moved to Out of Style. Like, what's thoughts on that?
He'll have fun.
I think
yeah,
that's
they'll have fun.
I
don't
think
think
a paycheck.
I don't think that move is really gonna help fix the team because Justin is just irreplaceable.
yeah.
You
I
don't
think
think it's
all
going to be the
the
biggest impact for free agent move?
Yep.
no. I think all the top free agents had gone for clear waters at that point.
Yeah.
And I think
That,
Hato
they
was
kind
kind
of
of
like
left
got what they
out.
could.
Hato was left out, and there was a spot that needed to be filled on that roster. And I think maybe just they said, okay, let's try it out. And maybe it works. We'll see. I think a lot of people are putting them at 1-6 or something, or 2-5 maybe. But
0-7.
I didn't want to say it.
Oh, no.
I didn't want to say it.
Don't do him like that.
But maybe we'll see. Maybe Hato can turn the tide on that team
Hopefully.
and make NA interesting.
Only 2 more weeks.
That's true. Only 2 more weeks. Well, I think unless you guys have any other closing comments here, anything we didn't cover that you wanted to cover.
OC's winning RLCS this season, by the way.
Winning?
Dude, I would
Yeah.
love that so much.
Yeah, I didn't stutter.
That would be
That's a bold
amazing.
prediction. We'll save that for the bold
Heard it here
predictions
first.
show.
We'll see how it pans out.
When you say OCE, you mean Chiefs.
Yeah.
Maybe
So I
we'll
think-
see the second OCE team win a game. Or win a series.
You win a second series.
No, that's the finals. That's the finals. First seed, the second seed.
Oh, oh my gosh. I would love that. That'd
And
be
on that
great.
note, I think we've gone through. I think we had some really great discussions tonight. Hopefully, you guys all enjoyed your time here. We definitely enjoyed our time here tonight. We'll be back next Monday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, same place, same time, with different topics. We're gonna start getting into RLCS discussions as that kind of forms itself, and we start to get the mold of the play-ins.
We'll have
and
all our
the
teams.
actual RLRS rosters. Yeah, we're gonna have plans are coming up fast, so everything is ramping up pretty quickly here in the next month. So it'll be a fun month here on Full Throttle. I think we're gonna have everyone back on Monday. It'll be a good time. So hopefully you guys can all join us and have a good night.
Goodbye from OCA.
Bye.
Bye bye.